Today we're happy to show off some more of Precipice. Precipice is a 1 or 2 player light strategy game set in the Cold War. My name's Crystal, and today we're going to give a little tour of this multiplayer gameplay. We're starting here as the Americans, and our goal is to have more victory points than the Soviets by game's end. Taking a look at our starting situation. Every country in NATO has pledged some measure of loyalty to us, so we get the unified front bonus for that. The Soviets have control of all of the Warsaw Pact, which isn't worth quite as much, but is easier to hold. The Soviets also have a great deal of influence in the Arab world, but not all Arab countries are sold on communism yet. We've got a little bit more influence than they do in both South and East Asia. Also important to note is that as the US, we start with a very powerful manufacturing economy, but we're vulnerable when it comes to food right now. Our food is exclusively being imported from Israel and Australia, so it would be smart for us to look for new allies to ensure we don't miss out on food opportunities that may arise. These resources not only unlock potential trade deals, but they also are essential for resolving international crises that will occur throughout the game. Let's talk about strategy. Strategy-wise, the first thing we want to do is deploy our agents into the world. Now, there are lots of different ways we could go about this, but I'm thinking that we should try to secure states in the Middle East as they're more vulnerable, and if we pull them away first, the Soviets can't have them. Now, Pakistan's food supply is going to be on our radar as well. If I was the Soviets, I'd probably want to put a spy there and start pulling them away from us as the US. So instead, I'm going to deploy a spy there to preemptively protect it from them. Now in Precipice, anytime an agent enters territory occupied by an enemy agent, the arriving spy is killed and can never be recovered. So when you do that, you have to really think about your positioning. Now oil is a resource that's just as important as food, especially later in the game. So let's see if it's time to use a little diplomacy to get us closer to a new ally like Saudi Arabia. One strategy I really like to use is misdirection, so I'm also going to put a spy in Bulgaria. If a lot of places get destabilized at once, I hope and I think that it will keep the enemy wondering which ones I'm really going for and then which ones are just a distraction. The Soviets have destabilized Brazil. Now in this game, a failed destabilization action actually can potentially destabilize nearby countries instead, so just because we saw Brazil go down doesn't mean it was actually the intended target at all. All that being said, we probably should still stabilize Brazil. Now, we're not completely blind as to where the Soviets are operating. We can infiltrate the KGB and see what scoring regions they're located in, which can give us insight into where there are safe places for us to operate. Now, we can see at least one agent is in South America, probably Brazil, and surprisingly they actually have one in the Middle East. We'll have to be careful not to move in too many of our agents around there. Now, Syria is a strong target for a coup, with it being bordered by both loyal Israel and Turkey. Now we have to destabilize it first, and that only has a 50% chance of success right now. So Syria is ready for our hostile takeover next turn, but we're going to have to assume that the Soviets will attempt to increase its stability. Which they do. Coups are one means by which country loyalties can change in this game. If a country is sufficiently destabilized, a coup might be possible, changing their leadership to strongly favor your interests rather than your opponents. Coups are supported if neighboring countries are also loyal to you. Okay, now, sometimes you catch your rivals in the act. In this case, the destabilization of Latin America. Maybe they've got 2 spies in that region, maybe they've moved the one, either way. We can force them to undo that action, increasing stability to what it was, or we could just let it go. The catch is if we do demand that they undo that action, they can always say no, and then we lose face. This escalation mechanic is at the core of Precipice. Okay, so back to Syria. If we can get one good destabilization, I'm pretty sure we can risk a coup. If it fails, well, we could drive them into the hands of our enemies. However, if we succeed, we're going to have a really good foothold in the Middle East. Looks like the Soviets want us to back off now. The UK isn't that critical right now, so let's see if they're willing to fight over it. Oh, they're doubling down on our restoring Syria. But Syria is kind of important to my plan right now. This is tricky. We're in a strong place, and I don't really want to forfeit the game, and losing Pakistan would be annoying, but at the same time, I don't think he's willing to forfeit either over this. It's just not that important for the Soviets. Let's go for it. They were bluffing. Okay, good. That works out great for us, as we see a lot of Russian influence across the globe diminished after that spat. Now, not all actions can be challenged, and how you feel you're doing in the game will probably affect how you approach the confrontations. If you back down, you might lose a little face, but if you're winning, you probably can afford it. If you never back down, nuclear war is inevitable, and a winning game will fast become a losing one. Players who are really behind in the game have a lot less to lose, and they may escalate at nothing. So in those situations, you might just want to let that instant go and try not to get caught. In Precipice, not every fight will be won, and not all of the fighting occurs on the battlefield. The good news is that populations will stop supporting leaders who are constantly pushing the confrontation at every event. There's a time to fight, and a time to pretend that there's a time to fight. And a lot of Precipice is decoding which is which scenario. Again with Brazil, and again we'll counter. He's going to have to commit more next round. We'll try for another coup in Syria and fails. Coups are just one tool in our toolbox. We can change country loyalty through diplomacy and trade agreements too. Some countries are in need of certain resources, and if we have enough of that resource in our reserves, for example oil for Mali, we can earn some instant favor with their population. Wow. The Soviets have invaded Pakistan and are throwing all their action points at it. Well, I think we should absolutely challenge this. Now, invasions are a very powerful means to change the government of a country to something more loyal to your interests. but long, drawn-out wars anger your own population. So if your domestic unrest gets too high, you can be forced out of power by your own actions. We just got a diplomatic cable. Okay, great. Well, this is an opportunity to show that there are other ways to respond to an invasion. We're gonna let this one go. So trying to ignore the minor UI glitch here, when you look at Pakistan, you'll see they've got forces fighting the local government. Now every turn, either the Pakistanis or the Soviets will lose a soldier. Whoever has the last soldier standing gets the country. Right now, the Soviets have a 66% chance of keeping their soldier, but if we train the local partisan forces and give them some aid, we can improve their survival odds to 50%. All right, again, we're going to try that Syria coup, and, success! Finally, we've got a pretty commanding lead over the Soviets now. While we're waiting for the Soviets to take their turn, Cold War fact! During the height of the Cold War, Neil Armstrong's final task on the moon was to place memorial items that honored fallen Russian cosmonauts. The space race is also captured in Precipice, and that gives you access to more powerful intelligence collection. And also, the first bear or eagle to reach the moon earns bonus victory points for their side. Well, there's no point fighting over Brazil if we can just keep stabilizing it. I'm not sure I want to spend 3 action points to train even stronger partisans. Now, I might regret this later, but instead, I want to ensure Syria is restabilized, just in case the Russians think about staging a coup of their own. Wow, that was regrettable. Anyway, while we're waiting again, another Cold War fact. During the Cold War, the USSR was actually able to tell a genuine Soviet passport apart from a forgery because the staples in real passports would corrode really quickly. All of this due to the poor quality of metal that was used in the genuine article. It appears they just attempted to coup Brazil and failed, which drives Brazil even closer to our sphere of influence. We have some oil now in our reserves that we can give to Mali for easy loyalty. So let's try again to see if we can earn some influence with the Saudis. While we're waiting for our rival to make his decisions, I'm happy to talk a little bit about the art of Precipice. Now, every country is represented by an animal that's native to that region or culturally tied to the nation. For example, the beaver for Canada, or the French rooster. Country leaders relevant to the Cold War were all hand-drawn as animals, wearing attire appropriate to the original leader on which they were based. And with a few exceptions here and there, most are already implemented in the game. Well, they finally cooed Brazil. You can see what effect that'll have on our score, so we're going to fight them for it. They need to know that we're not backing down. We're gonna go for it. Oh, this is also a good time to note that the game has a lot of unlockable medals and achievements, all that can be earned through single and multiplayer gameplay. These achievements also unlock short stories that take place in the surrealistic, animal-populated Cold War world. We're really proud of how the system continues to expand upon and build the world of Precipice. Well, they're not taking the bait. If I ready the nuclear missiles, they may force a mutual loss. But if I back down, I stand to lose a lot of loyalty from a lot of countries. Alright, I'm still not out of it. The game is very winnable, so backing down is worthwhile for now. Maybe I'll be able to coup it back. Maybe I'll focus more on East Asia instead. So that's a good place to end this tour. The game will be going to closed beta very soon, so we'll be working on tweaking the balance, fixing bugs, making sure it's polished. Precipice is available right now to wishlist on Steam, and you can go to www.littlereddoggames.com and sign up for our mailing list to get the latest news. We want to hear your impressions, so please comment on this video, write to us, let us know what you like or don't like. Thanks for watching, and we'll share more updates soon.